The 25th chapter of Exodus contains God's instructions to the Jewish people on how to build the Mishkan, the tabernacle, a sort of portable temple that the Israelites would carry with them in the desert and in the generations to follow until they were able to build the temple in Jerusalem. And it begins with God saying to Moses, "Tell the Israelites to take for me an offering. From all whose hearts prompt them to give, shall you receive the offering for me." This language is a little unusual. We're accustomed to God speaking to us in the Torah in the language of commandment, of mitzvah, chok, mishpat, chovah, all of these words indicating that we don't really have a choice in whether we're going to follow these instructions or not. And in fact, the Talmud says, "Greater is the one who is commanded and does than the one who is not commanded and does." There is a value in mitzvah. There is a value in being commanded. And yet when it comes to the construction of the Mishkan, it has to be from freely offered gifts, from gifts of the heart. Why is that? A few verses later, God very famously says, "Asuli mikdash v'shachanti betocham." Build for me, or make for me, a holy place, and I will dwell among you. And once again, we see a verse that challenges what we think we know about Judaism. After all, our God is not simply the God of Israel or the God of a temple. Our God is the God of the universe. Our God cannot be contained by some sort of building. And in fact, Solomon, the builder of the temple, goes as far as to say this. In the book of 1 Kings, at the inauguration of the temple, Solomon says, "But will God indeed dwell on earth? Even heaven and the highest heaven cannot contain you, much less this house that I have built." His father David does not understand the temple as being the place where God will dwell, but in fact speaks of the temple as the footstool of our God. So in this conception, God is sitting on a heavenly throne, and God is resting his divine feet on the temple, not in the temple. And even this understanding of the temple is too much for the prophet Isaiah, who in his final chapter says, "Thus says the Lord, heaven is my throne, and the earth is my footstool. What is this house that you would build for me? And what is my resting place?" So here, the entire earth is God's footstool. There's no way the temple is big enough to be that. The temple cannot satisfy this requirement to be God's footstool. God needs the entire earth. And Isaiah, in his own description of heaven, says, "I saw the Lord sitting on a throne high and lofty, and the hem of his robe filled the temple." So the edge of God's garment, the metaphorical robe that a king wears, just the merest edge of it is filling the temple. The tiniest little speck, the tiniest little crumb of God, of godliness, of the holiness of God, completely fills the temple. God is way too big for the temple. And so what on earth can it ever mean to say, "Asuli mikdash v'shachanti betocham"? If you build for me a sanctuary, a holy place, I will dwell among you. It is not the building that is holy. It is the act of building that is holy. It is the decision to build the Mishkan that is holy. It is the decision to bring God into our lives that is the act of holiness. And that decision has to be voluntary. We can be commanded to do just about anything, but we cannot be commanded to follow the commandments. That has to be a decision of the heart. The decision to accept Torah into our lives has to be an offering of the heart. We have been prompted to give by some feeling in our hearts, but at the end of the day, it is a choice to be Jewish. It is a choice to follow Torah. It is a choice to bring God into our lives and to accept upon us the yoke of the commandments.